Are you looking to level up your football performance? Well, in today's video, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to do from a strength and conditioning perspective to be a better football player. That's right, we're going to cover everything from sprints to plyometrics to your weightlifting movements to your big strength movements and even your accessory drills to overall make you a better football player. Let's get to it. Hey there, Brandon Splay here from Thirst Gym, and today I'm helping you be a better football player. Knowing that football is a unique sport and that it's a highly contact-driven sport. You know, you're constantly taking hits, unless if you are like a kicker or a quarterback, but you are still taking hits every now and then. You are going to need not only a lot of size to be able to withstand those hits, but you're also going to be powerful, explosive, and fast. And depending upon your position, that can vary quite a bit. But we're going to talk about all these different training methods that can help you be a better athlete, because historically, most people just think of the squat, the bench press, and the power clean. And while those are great exercises, and I do think they should still be a staple of your training program, there's a lot of other pieces that are missing that you can use to be a better football player. You want to be able to create as much force as possible when you put that foot into the ground. Whether you're pushing an opponent out of the way, you're jumping up to make a catch, or you're trying to cut and change direction or backpedal and chase a defender, come over your shoulder, or you are a quarterback, you are throwing the football, you are a kicker, you are kicking the football. Everything is derived from being explosive and powerful. And so today I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know to be a better football player and do just that. All right, the first thing you need to do as a football player is you need to be sprinting and changing direction. Even if you are a big guy and you're a big offensive lineman, change of direction is important because you are going to have to be able to shuffle, right? So we want to make sure that we're sprinting linearly. That's in a straight line, 5 to 10 yards hard, at least 2 times per week, in my opinion. You want to have a very hard and heavy day to where you're really trying to just focusing on the mechanic side of things, getting rep after rep after rep. So while it may not be 100% all-out sprint, you're really 100% focusing on the technical side of sprinting. And then the second one, then take that technical work and then actually have some higher effort outputs where you might be focusing more on the 5, 10, 15, maybe even 20-yard sprint side, because for most football players, you are going to have to be able to run those distances pretty consistently. Then if you happen to be a DB or a wide receiver or a running back, that secondary day, you can focus more on some of the longer duration sprints, you know, the 20s, the 40s, the 60s, the 80s, maybe even a couple hundreds are all great. If you're a lineman, I really don't see much of a need for you to sprint much more than 40 yards. You certainly can if you want to, but you really want to focus more on that 5 to 10 yard block because that's kind of where you're home at. The second thing is then focusing on change of direction. So you can also have a change of direction based day where you're doing different lateral shuffle variations. You're focusing on sticking, planting, and coming out. Lineman, you definitely want to have more of that arch curve shuffle, you know, as you're stepping back, trying to actually stay in front of the defender. So you actually want more lateral and backward shuffling, where a wide receiver, DB, running back, even a linebacker, you are going to want more lateral based work pretty consistently in your training plan. So just make sure you're doing some kind of sprint and change of direction work at least twice a week. You are likely getting some of this in your football practice, so continue to work on those drills as well. You can take some home and work on it, but also in the strength and conditioning side, you do want to do this with a separate day and do this at the beginning so that you can not only give high effort, but that you're fresh and so you can focus on the technical aspect just as much as the actual physical aspect. All right, the second thing you're going to need to do is focusing on plyometrics. Now, plyometrics are important because it helps us improve rate of force development. So being able to jump as high as we possibly can, sprint as fast as we possibly can, land if we are jumping, being able to plant and change direction as we kind of talked about, but also the force absorption side of being able to step back if you happen to take a hit, okay? Plyometrics are all important for that because you're gonna wanna be reactive in everything that you're doing on the football field. So by focusing on weighted jumps, box jumps, hurdle hops, lateral bounds, broad jumps, anything like that should be the next piece in your training plan. So after you sprint, you want to jump. Now, for a time perspective, you can always pair your jumps with your sprints, or you can pair your jumps with some of your lifts, all totally fine, but make sure that you're doing plyometrics in some capacity. And to pair with plyometrics, I'm also going to add in med ball training because essentially that's upper body plyometrics. So you also want to make sure that you're slamming med balls, you're throwing med balls side to side, or doing different chest pass variations as well, so that way you can explosively train your upper body. Linemen obviously are going to want to do more actual pressing work because they're actually trying to push people out of the way. For wide receivers, DBs, linebackers, I like doing different throws side to side or actual slams. So that way we can kind of train the fascia system, get good quality triple extension and flexion, and being able to work in different planes of motion, but still be explosive upstairs as well. And that's going to cover a lot of your plyometrics-based stuff. So again, you want to make sure you do this at least twice a week. So it pairs nicely with the sprints in that regard. But if you're not doing plyometric training, you're really missing out on being able to be the most explosive athlete that you possibly can be. All right, the third thing you need to focus on here are your weightlifting movements. And by weightlifting, people are going to call Olympic lifting, but it is a sport of weightlifting. But regardless, you are going to want to do some of these movements. They are fantastic in not only training triple extension, but they're great for force absorption. So learning how to absorb weight, whether it be a snatch or a clean and jerk. You are going to have to learn to absorb force in football. You are going to get hit. So you might as well get used to absorbing hundreds of pounds in those lifts and improving, again, your rate of force development, being explosive. And they also just do a great job of building full body technical coordination and strength as well. So again, talking about our days, ideally for me, especially if I have football players going 3 days a week, I like to have a day where we focus more on the clean. Usually that's my more lower body focus day. My upper body focus day, I like to do different jerks and push presses to explosively train the upper body, but still get some of that absorption, but we can also still get triple extension from our jerks. And then the third day, I like to focus more on the snatch, focusing on the power position and actually trying to be athletic and get underneath that weight and get it overhead as fast as possible. You do not have to do weightlifting movements, but in my opinion, I do think they are something you should implement. I think there's just a great amount of transfer into the sport of football, and it's not only going to make you stronger and more explosive, but it's going to make you more resilient because of that as well. So you're going to sprint, you're going to jump, and now you're going to do a weightlifting based movement, and now you're really able to focus on all these next steps, which are probably the easiest part that you usually think of when it comes to training for football. All right, the next piece we're going to focus on are our big compound movements. Okay, this is going to be where we're going to have our general strength, where we're actually going to try to get strong. We're intentionally going to move slow with these weights. So while you want to be powerful and explosive, you are going to have to be stronger to be able to do that. There's two coins here. You can move fast with light stuff, which is our speed, our plyometrics. We kind of shift to the middle a little bit. We do some weightlifting stuff, so it'll be heavy, but you're still moving relatively fast. And then we're going to slow down and focus on just our strength work, moving heavy weights, still as fast as we can, but they are going to be heavy. These are going to be your front squats, your back squats, your bench press, your incline bench press, your chin up, your pull up, your barbell rows, your sumo deadlift, your conventional deadlift, and your hex bar deadlift. Those are kind of the big group of exercises that I'm talking about here. Which one you pick is kind of up to you and what you think you need. If you are not good at catching your clean down in the bottom, for example, I would probably recommend that you front squat more so that you get comfortable being in that position of catching the front squat. If you happen to have really poor hip mobility, then maybe you go with a trap bar so that you can still deadlift a significant amount of weight as you go to improve your hip mobility. If your hip mobility is good or you are like a lineman, being in a nice big wide stance, focusing on hip structure and strength is going to be great for helping you move side to side in that line and hold your ground. And then from a pressing perspective, I think doing both the incline and the regular bench press are fantastic. If you're a lineman, I think you can get away with a little more bench pressing because they're probably going to be more out in front of you. Other athletes, I think focusing on the incline is just a good middle ground of being able to mix between an overhead press and a bench press. I'm not against the overhead press, but I think for football, that just does a better job of building more upper body strength because we can handle more load. But you can do other dumbbell overhead pressing variations as accessory work. And then you want a nice big strong back as well. So that's where the bent over rows, chest supported rows, and your pull-ups and your chin-ups really come into building a big backside. So it can be time efficient with what we're doing. So those are just general strength exercises. How you lay them out with your own training can really be up to you. But really, as long as you're picking a squat pattern, a heavy press pattern, a heavy pull pattern, and a heavy upper body pull pattern, you're going to cover majority of your bases in terms of your general strength for football. All right, and the last thing we're going to talk about here is going to be your accessory lifts. So these are going to be smaller exercises that you're usually going to use to build muscle and kind of quote unquote fill the gaps. What I mean by this is if you need to put some more size upstairs, you need to build your upper body, then you can focus more on doing things like lateral raises and different dumbbell raises, skull crushers, curls, more push-ups, dips, more rows, shrugs, and you need to put weight upstairs. Lower body side, usually this is where you're going to want to do a little more hamstring specific work, especially if you've not done as much sprinting as you should. Prepare your hamstrings appropriately, so getting your hamstrings stronger. You could also do more ankle complex based work if you happen to be prone to ankle issues, or you are a big change of direction athlete like a wide receiver or a DB. You can also do a little bit more calf complex. If your knees are aching, then you can do more specific quad based work to develop that. Any of that works great. Generally speaking, you're going to want to take a little bit of extra posterior chain work and a little bit of extra upper back and arm work for most football players, and that's going to cover most of your bases. The goal with these, though, is to get a lot of blood flow. It should be very quick in terms of the time. So, like, you shouldn't be doing an hour of accessory work. We're talking 15 to 20 minutes at the absolute most, and picking your low-hanging fruit that's going to work well for either your position or what you need as an athlete. And once you do that, you're going to feel a nice big pump, especially from the upstairs or lower body. And a lot of times that can also help promote recovery as well by flushing a lot of blood into those areas if you happen to have like a hard practice the day before. So that should wrap up everything that you need from a training perspective. Now that you've got all that done, what do we do from a programming and periodization standpoint? How do we know what to do and when to do where? Well, generally speaking, I've got some recommendations. I think for the most part, you should be training at least 3 days a week most of the year, maybe even 4 if you can swing it. I'll have a video linked in the description box below of what that perfect system might look like for any athlete, but it can also work for football. But I'm going to walk you through what I would recommend during certain phases of the year. So the first one would be in your off season. So when football is completely done, you maybe take a week or 2 off, and then you're going to be in your off season. And I think 4 days a week of your strength training is where you need to be here. You can have 2 lower body days and 2 upper body days. And ideally those will be separated by 72 hours of rest. Meaning if I do my lower body on Monday, I don't want to do it again Tuesday or Wednesday. Ideally I want to do it probably Thursday would be the sweet spot. Same thing if I do my upper body on Tuesday, then I can do my other upper body session on Friday, and that allows enough recovery between the body parts. Now, it can also give you your weekends somewhat quote-unquote free. You can also shift those around to where you can go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, and you'll get the same kind of outline as well. You're just going to have to work out on Saturdays, right? But this works great because you have your 2 lower body days, your 2 upper body days, so you can have a day where you're focusing on linear speed as you're running and vertical jumping. That's what I prefer. And then you can actually do a weightlifting based movement. So there's where you can do your clean, and then you can focus on your squat and a couple accessory movements as needed from there. Then your next upper body day, you can do, say, an upper body plyometrics. So that could be a plyo push up, for example, or it could even be a jerk or a push press. You could then add in a med ball variation as well. And then you could add in your main strength-based work. So that would be your bench press or your incline bench press. And then you could add in some of your accessory work from there, some extra dumbbell work, some extra upper back work, some extra tricep work, what have you. Then your next lower body day, again, we're going to do another plyometric. We can do a lateral plyometric or a forward plyometric on top of our speed work, which I like doing lateral change of direction work in terms of our speed work. And then we could go and do our snatch, and then we can necessarily move to something like an RDL, especially in the off season, build those hamstrings strong from eccentric perspective first, and then some extra lower body accessory work like some lunges or step ups or some extra glute ham raises, reverse hypers, abdominal work. You got the idea. And then we'd have our second upper body day, which would fill the gaps from our first upper body day, probably a secondary pushing variation, really focusing on hard on the chins and the pull-ups and maybe some extra back work, and then whatever you want to do, fluff and buff, and call it a day. That would be a good off-season structure. Then we go into like preseason, which would be, for me, what I would consider going into the summer, okay? That's usually when your football time really starts to ramp up. So you might want to pull back to a 3-day structure where you have a lower body day, an upper body day, and a full body day. And you get a little more variation here where you could have your lower body day on Monday, your upper body day on Tuesday, and your full body day on Friday. That gives you 2 days of rest in between a lot of those movements. And then you also have your weekends free to allow for recovery, and you can structure your football practices around that a little bit easier to where you maybe don't do a lot of hard sprinting and stuff on Monday because you know you're going to have a hard lower body lift that day. You can do your sprinting harder more on Wednesday or Thursday in preparation for your full body day on Friday. Then once season comes, then you got to really kind of peel back. Usually with school demands, especially if you're an athlete, adding in also your practices and then your games, that'd be Friday or Saturdays. Now you're probably looking at 1 or 2 days a week. And this is what is basically your maintenance phase. You can still make progress here, and you should still try to make progress, but you want to make sure you're doing your big bang for your buck stuff. So you still want to make sure you're cleaning and snatching. You're probably still doing some kind of squat variation and some kind of pull variation, some chins, some bench pressing. And those are usually going to be more full body based sessions because you are so limited on time. You're going to decrease your volume. You're going to keep your intensity relatively high, hit some heavy work, do some blood flow work on the areas that you need it, and get out. And that's really the gist of how the cycle is going to go all year. So you can start with, quite a bit of sessions, 4, dwindle down to 3, and then dwindle down to 2 to 1 in season, and then you go back and you do that, stack that year over year. So there you have it. There's everything you need to be a faster and more explosive and powerful football player on the field using things in the strength and conditioning room. We covered how you can work on your sprinting, change of direction mechanics, how you can be using your plyometrics to improve rate of force development, as well as using your weightlifting based movements to not only get stronger, but learn how to absorb force and be more resilient at taking those hits, improving your general strength so that again, you can have more power output and have a bigger engine, and then your overall hypertrophy based work to put mass on, weigh enough, and actually be resilient over the course of a long football season. Football is incredibly demanding, so if you follow this template and step that I laid out, you will make progress. Obviously, I did not go into the nuances here of every single thing that you should do, but in general, I provided you a template that you can adapt and mold that you can use to be a surefire way to see success. If you happen to take one awesome thing away from today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button, subscribe, share with a friend, leave me a comment, and let me know how it helped you, and I'll see you at the next video.